Greetings, TRU community, family, friends, guests. Welcome to today's community gathering. It is August 29th, the last Friday before Labor Day. Woo! We made it, and we have been laboring here at TRU. Although our executive director is in Ireland at Edinburgh Fringe. So join us next week where he's going to be talking all about that. But today we are going to talk shop about adapting short plays into films, which is our series at TRUSpeak. And I am so happy to be joined by an amazing panel with my co-executive producer, Carley Santori. Woo! So we're going to talk shop. I'm a TRU board member, and I can't wait to get into this. Carley.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Carley Santori. As Janelle introduced me, I'm one of the executive producers of this year's TRUSpeak. I have been involved from the beginning with TRUSpeak. I originally came on as a tech person and stayed on all throughout the years. And this year I got the chance to help executive produce it. And it has been a really fun ride. So yeah, I'll hand it back to Janelle to kind of introduce the program and what we're working on this year.
Great. So TRUSpeak actually began in the midst of the pandemic when we have all these creative people that are part of our family. And the thing that we think theater is everyone being in community in one space, breathing the same air, rubbing up shoulders against each other. That was our vision of theater. Now, when we're in our little isolated pods, going a little stir crazy, we had to figure out a way to still be creative. So TRUSpeak was born. Eben Sento, who was also our tech consultant at the time, was instrumental in sort of bringing us into this world as theater makers. And we were thinking, how can we sort of bridge these two things together and be creative at the same time? And so we sort of stumbled upon this really interesting lane of hybrid theater and film. And it's pretty funny because one of my entrees into producing in the beginning was actually, I had a whole bunch of theater maker friends, and I wasn't really necessarily into theater, but I had a lot of event producing sort of skills. And so I would commiserate with these theater makers, writers, and different film, not theater makers specifically, about not being hired for the things that they wanted to be hired. And I gave them a challenge. I said, you know what? Write something and I will figure out a way to finance it. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, let's stop waiting around. Let's just figure it out. We'll figure it out. And that's exactly what we did. And the first thing that we came together was a short film. And lo and behold, we got to the Mecca on the first try. We got to Sundance. And, back in those days, it was sort of, I joke, it's sort of the Crips and the Bloods. Either you had theater or you had film, but you didn't have the two. So that's why I'm so proud of what TRU has done to sort of, turn this whole vehicle into collaboration. So this TRUSpeak, each one is a little bit different. And this one, we were really sort of focusing in on how can we make theater more cinematic and how can we make film more theatrical. So that's sort of the lens and the purview that we're looking at this time. And so the very first incarnation is getting the scripts on board. I like to say that the Bible is the word and the playwright is centered in that place. A lot of times in film, these wonderful writers get lost in the sauce. And so I will even say maybe towards the couple of the TRUSpeaks that came before, because we were just sort of bumbling our way and figuring it out. We just started running, right? And so this time, Carly and I, when we talked about doing it this time, we said, we want to give the playwright access to this thing that they created in their head to collaborate and be a part of it. So that's what we did this particular time. And I have to tell you, across the board, the playwrights have been fantastic in just being really amenable to playing the game, adapting, and just, coming up with different scenarios and adapting it to film. And so the first person that I would like to sort of engage in conversation actually is Scott Sickles, because Scott Sickles is the playwright of Reckoner. Scott also is on the board along with me and has in previous incarnations also been part of the selection process. So Scott, tell us a little bit about being a reader for TRUSpeak, and then we can get into your project.
Great. Well, it's always fascinating to see yeah, what for TRUSpeak, because they're all scripts that are inspired by social concerns, current events, um, politics, life. It's interesting to see what playwrights, what is inspiring all the playwrights, what is most important to them. Is it a slapping game on the internet, which Cady had acted in that first year, and it was fascinating to see these plays, but also fascinating to see how they were turned into films, because I do remember specifically that the actors had not met until I think the breakout room. They were in the breakout room after they hit at the benefit, so that was amazing. But actually looking to see, how people are inspired, how theatrical they're going to be, how they want to tell these individual stories. Is it realistic? Is it more surreal? And every now and then there's something that's like about a very niche group, like it's about show business, or it's about politically incorrect passwords. It's about you really there's just such a great spectrum, and it's always fascinating to see how these are turned into good stories. And we go through a lot of scripts. We've went through just a lot of scripts, and some are more resonant than others, and that's the tricky part. But you really see everyone's inspiration and voices in different ways, and that in turn is very inspiring, just as a reader, to know what people are passionate about.
Yes, and so in our deliberations for finals, Scott and I are usually the ones that are most vocal about all the things. So this particular go round, I missed him because he wasn't a part of the selection committee, because he didn't tell me that he had submitted to TRUSpeak, because we read everything blind. We don't know like who wrote what. And so I felt some kind of way that, he wasn't at the submission, because I didn't know. And then, further on down the line, I got to figure out that he was actually the writer of Reckoner. So Scott, with that being said,
Yeah.
there was a long sort of time frame between when you initially wrote Reckoner and then when we decided to go into production. And as you were saying about, the socially relevant sort of piece of it, can you talk about at that time, it being relevant, and then coming up to now, what you did in adapting it to film? Because I have to say, you really took the assignment seriously, because when you first submitted, it was really kind of a play. And then when we started talking about it, you were like, oh, wait a minute, no, I'm going to take this exercise. And then you actually turned it format-wise into a screenplay. Overachiever. So talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, Reckoner, the story is it takes it's a very theatrical piece, but it takes place over a few sort of a couple different timelines, because the framing device of that piece is a government agent is visiting a woman to explain.
Not too many spoilers, Scott. Not too many spoilers.
Okay, yeah, no, but there's been a significant incident, and that her father is involved, and she is also dealing with the suicide of her trans child. And it turns out that and I don't really consider this as a spoiler, but her trans daughter was essentially driven to suicide by the political rhetoric of the grandfather who is now involved in this particular political incident. It was inspired in many ways by Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis has inspired some of my angriest work, but it was the persecution emblematic of trans children and trans teens in Florida that, of course, is just symptomatic of trans persecution across the country and quite frankly, around the world. But this dealt very specifically with American politics. And in the course of this, of the play, we see conversations between this woman, Teresa, played beautifully by Lori Vega in our film, and we see conversations between her and her father, and we see in the play a very long monologue from the child who committed suicide. We see the suicide note that they wrote as a poem. I am not a poet, but she was, so I got to write this sort of self elegy.
Which is so beautiful, Scott, the way
Thank you.
The way that you handle that. And it's interesting in adapting it though for film when we
Yeah.
had the conversation, because out of all the plays, Scott's was the longest, right? So we had some banter back and forth about that, which is fine, great. But it's an interesting thing in film where, we could have silence for a minute and it'd be fine. But in theater, we have sort of the impetus to write words a lot, right? And so
Yeah.
I definitely noticed that when you adapted it to film, you took the breaking up of the monologue in order to keep the rhythm of it, right?
It's a long monologue, and it's and to have a talking head just say that for a long period of time on film, especially a film this size, I'm not sure to what extent it would have captured the emotional state of what was going on. And I wanted to, and it's not like you can't do a long monologue on film, but it's rare. It is a rare thing, and I really wanted to see the evolution of how this character got to where they were. And so I wrote in a lot of intercuts of that character, sort of in turmoil, writing in their journal, crying in the public park, being at peace before they take their own life. And it goes back and forth, and it was very carefully chosen, which moments were very carefully chosen in my head. How the edit will turn out is a different story, but in my head, like what I wanted the viewer to see as these words were being spoken. It's really and I'm sure that made the screenplay page-wise longer than it would actually be, because there are lines and dialogue dedicated to moments in the film that will be very brief. Yes. But it's and we're fortunate that we had a great cast, and our Australia was a magnificent young actor, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it all comes together.
Thank you so much, Scott, for really taking the assignment and going on the ride. So after we sort of, get the playwright sort of sorted and know that the play is, the next step that we take is the producer step. So we want to attach a producer to a script that speaks to the producer. And so today, representing the producers, see what I did there? We've got Miss Cady Huffman. Woo-hoo!
I didn't get that at first. That's how long it's been.
Thank you, Cady, so much.
Thank you.
So great to see you. I'm sure Carley has questions for you, so I'll pass it over to Carley.
Great.
So Cady has been involved in every year of TRU. You've done every role by now. And this year you came back as a producer. And I approached you with this script. And I wanted to know what your original impression was and what made you think, like, what you wanted to do with TRU this year coming back. What was TRUSpeak to you after doing it for all these years?
Well, I do. I mean, I too have been not on the selection committee, but I've read all the scripts and been a part of that process. and it's important. You know, there's just a lot of it's so interesting when you read the scripts, because there's certainly the subject matter can be so powerful that you want to produce it.
Mhm.
Someone else may have a more skilled written piece of work, but sometimes it's just that. And then I like being the director or producer, really helping develop whatever that is. So this one I thought was very well written, and as it turned out, I'd worked with that writer before. I had directed one of his pieces. And it's a women's subject. It's a subject that's very much in the news. It's about the Texas abortion laws and how vagaries make everybody nervous. And then it becomes, for me, it was about how do you rebel without, what is the current Underground Railroad of this subject? How do we help people when it's really dangerous to do so? And I was excited. I didn't want to direct it because I don't know, I tend to make things a little funnier than they may be. So I didn't want to get into that. I knew Megan would be perfect for it. And then I was able to cast three great women, but two of them who have worked a lot together and who have been on Broadway together, and which they've also both worked in film a lot as well. So it's kind of fun to have these theater actors who were very well versed in film sparring. So we got Tanya Pinkins, who's a Tony Award winner, and Vianne Cox, who they had starred in Caroline or Change, the original Caroline or Change, on Broadway together. And they are both very passionate. And I knew that having them together was the key ingredient. That's what we needed. We did not need one person.
I remember us talking and saying, I want to see this tennis match. I want to see this tennis match. So I will tell you, so in the precursor in my head, we sort of stepped over you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? And the reason why I was so keen for this team specifically is I call it the Tony Ladies team. So Cady is a Tony winner, and we have two other nominees, and when I love this team of strong veteran women. So Cady, tell us a little bit about all the roles that you've played in your own professional life that sort of lends you to where you are now, and sort of in this incarnation this time.
Well, this is my 42nd year as a professional actor, so I can't really tell you all of them, but I'll try to do as well as I can. And this year also marks the 40th anniversary of my Broadway debut. So I was a teenage drag queen in La Cage aux Folles.
I
started it all off. I was also a dancer. I danced with Bob Fosse before he passed. He did his last original piece. My first starring role on Broadway was the Rogers Follies, for which I received a Tony nomination, and then the Producers, for which I won a Tony Award. I have been on soap operas. I have been a judge on Iron Chef America. I have a film out right now called Everything's Going to Be Great, which is a love letter to regional theater and made by a friend of mine, a screenwriter who wrote I, Tonya, but his father, when I was 18, gave me my equity card. So there's a bit of like my life up there as well. Later this year, I'll be on Palm Royale doing the broadest humor I've ever done. So we'll see how that works out. I am Swedish again. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed producing this one. This one was like so fun to produce, and using. I think the biggest thing in being a producer is using your contacts, and favors, and being somebody who exchanges favors and knows where to go and what to do. And I knew that, Megan would have SVA most likely, and knowing these two actors. And I had just directed my first off-Broadway musical, which Kiana had starred in. So, it's fun for me to figure out how to do it. And I think we came in under budget, which is
Yes,
You
you
did.
did. You did.
Under
You won the Price is Right. Yes, definitely. Yes, you did.
yeah,
under the micro budget,
yeah,
underneath it. Crazy.
crazy.
Yes.
It's a small budget. But then you're like, well, I realize how much I love doing this. That means other people love doing it too. So, yeah, it's getting, Wendy, like literally my co-producer, I put her on the set because she knows how to keep people happy. She's just a kind, smart, mothering kind of presence where she just never loses her shit. She just never does. She's always, what do you need? What can I do? And I think that's a very important person to have on set. So anyway, it's getting that right team together, which I also am just crazy about doing. I just love making the team that's going to work together well. Yeah. So is that enough?
Yeah, so with Safe Harbor and your pre-existing sort of relationship with the playwright, James McClinton, can you tell us a little bit about the script and you guys went through a couple of different scripts there. So talk about that sort of relationship between the producer and the playwright in sort of adapting it to film and getting it to what we'll eventually see.
Yeah, so as the producer on this one particularly is getting the playwright and the director on the same page, because my director is a very passionate, she's what do you call it when someone's, she fights for justice in her everyday life. So she had read it, she had some ideas, and I'm like, well, why not? I'm not the director, so I present those ideas to the writer because it's not my gig on this one. My gig is just to hear what they have to say. So we had a male presenting character that became a female presenting character, and it was really fascinating to watch how each of them, because I was the go-between a lot. Everybody's busy, and I was reachable and would have to try to explain points of view to these people. And yeah, it was really interesting because James, who wrote it, he knows what he wants. So in order to change it, there has to be a really good reason for him. He's an attorney, his wife is a doctor, like they're just not screwing around. He knows what he wants. So it was fun. And I think it works better with a female character as opposed to the male character. For on many levels, because it is such a strong women's subject. And it's fun. It was a pretty much almost all female crew, though we had some people who are non-binary as well, and but yeah, it was exciting to develop it, because it's hard for me not to be bossy and have my opinions, like I have very strong opinions. So as the producer, I really have to hear everybody's opinions and not insist upon mine. Whereas as the director, I'm much more pushy about what I think I want. And yeah, it's fun because James knew me as a director, and I had a lot of fun directing his other piece on green screen with Vianne playing 4 characters, 3 men and a woman. I mean, I just loved it. I want to go back and do more on it. But anyway,
but yeah, it was great to watch the trust, and you really be the negotiator of all the things, so it was really a pleasure to watch you sort of orchestrate all the things.
Yeah, it's fun for me. I just love it. I mean, I love shutting up and listening to other people's opinions. It's not easy for me, but I always benefit from it when I do it.
Yeah, that's a skill in and of itself. It really is. It really is. And then after the producer, the next on board is the director. So Carley, you wanna take that?
Yeah. Kingsley, can we bring you on? Great. So
yeah, I'm right here.
Wonderful. Kingsley was the director of Peter and Dimitri. So would you like to tell us a little bit about your background?
Oh, my background. So, I am originally born and raised. I always say I'm born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, and people look at me like, "What are you talking about?" Um, I'm born and raised in Ghana, West Africa, and I mean, I lived there most, part of my life up to like 2009, where I was kind of working with New York University Global Campus and in and out, like New York and in Ghana. Um, and then fast forward, I moved to Athens, Ohio to do my master's in film, producing, directing. But before that, and I think that part is also very crucial when it comes to what we are talking about. Before that, I was in the performing arts, so I kind of evolved from stage, acting, directing for stage, and then for the love of the cameras, for the love of the toys and technology when it comes to film. I, transitioned into film production. So I've been doing it for a while, mainly focusing on, film now, not so much theater stuff, documentary narrative work. And I am currently with Columbus College of Art and Design, CCAD, running the film and video program, and I'm, teaching full time as well.
So, Amy Drake was the producer of this, and she brought you the script, and y'all had previously worked together, right, on another film.
Yes.
So when she brought this to you, what was kind of your first impression of the script?
So, Amy Drake, again, thanks to Amy Drake, I had to, I don't know, I wasn't seeing her on the call, so I shared the information with her to hop on. But Amy worked with me. I worked with Amy on her script, or one of her plays she wrote, brought it, to screen, that is on Emily Dickinson. So the historical meeting between Emily Dickinson and Higginson. And it was really an interesting one. I personally had not really dived into Emily's work. I like poetry, but particularly Emily's work was just surface level for me. And then when that project came along, I was like, this is an opportunity for me to really dive into Emily's work, and it was great. We had really great actors. Um, and for me, I always talk about it. I mean, Carly, I mentioned it when we talked. I was like, for me, it's a learning curve. As a director, it opens a lot of opportunity for me to dive into a topic that otherwise would not be, I wouldn't be even looking at. And the same applies to, Dimitri, and that script was striking to me. I have to be very honest. And I had to dive into, Dimitri and Piotr's like work to be able to direct this piece. And the interesting aspect also was the fact that we want to have that theater feel to it, but still make it cinematic. So it's like, this is a great challenge, and I love to take on challenges. So who would think a Ghanaian born will be directing a stage play for Russian composers. So, but that's what art does to us. That's what creativity does to us. That's what theater, film, world of creativity does to us. So
We get to learn so much. And you said you were thinking about film and using theater in that. What was the way in which you were kind of adding that in? Was it like shot choices? Like what was your thought process of that? Curious.
um
Was
so
it acting style? Like,
yeah, so let's begin from the acting style. So the acting, of course, we had two theater actors. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I'm looking forward to the final, cut. Um, they did really well. Um, we decided to keep some of the things personally. Looking at, film and theater, I always say there's that, fine line between, film and theater. And with that understanding, I kind of make the actors keep certain aspect that, otherwise I would have taken out of their performance or their delivery, or the way they're going about it when it comes to the screen. I didn't limit that, so there's that theater feel and then the film side as well to it when it comes to the performance. But then when it comes to the cinematic side of it, film has rules, and as most of us will know, um, a typical example, just right on top of my head, when it comes to the 180-degree, line, imaginary line, you're always particular. You don't want to confuse your audience as to, where a character is looking versus the other character looking. So you want to be mindful as you're shooting, um, when it comes to the 180-degree line. But then with this piece, in as much as I was mindful of that, it was also intentional. I was intentionally breaking some of those rules because for me, I said to myself, this piece, I don't see it as um a performance that is just meant for the screen. We sitting on one side, actors or talent sitting on the other side, but it's more of a theater in a round, theater in an arena. So an arena, if someone is sitting on the other side, Pietro will be looking screen left, but then if I'm sitting on the other side, Pietro will be looking screen right. So that is a technique I kind of use, intentionally breaking the 180-degree, rule.
Totally. That's so interesting. I see also Rachel Bass nodding a lot as one of our other panelists. So I'd love to bring up her to jump into this combo too, because she was our production coordinator, also kind of film consultant for writing lessons. Rachel is a personal collaborator of mine. So when we talk about bringing people into it, I brought her in because I know she's really great about talking about theater and then kind of moving into film because that's her personal background as well. So Rachel, do you want to give us just a little taste of what your background is, and then we can jump into some questions?
Sure. I'm the small one of the group. I started as a dramaturg in New York and worked in that for 6 to 8 years or so. Started directing downtown, and then when COVID happened, slowly evolved into working more in film. And I spent the last year and a half really switching fully over. I've worked with Carly on both, and I think the reason I was called to be a part of it is, I guess, speaking about the choices that we make between theater and film, and the ways that they're similar and the ways that they're very different. And that was a lot of my role. A lot of my roles was being sort of in a similarity to a dramaturg, being the like friend to the production. So helping with the producer, with crew, and finding the right team members that would be the best use for a lot of our crew. Like a lot of our team was new to film entirely, and so giving them the right skill sets and materials just to make informed decisions and make the I guess be able to be playing with theater and film as mediums as much as Cady and Kingsley have been referring to.
Totally. What were some of the tools you were able to speak with? You were working with Misty Wells, who's the director, and I know you had a lot of conversations about like different things she could be playing with. So could you provide some examples of like things that you brought to the table?
Sure. I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, I think that the way that I think about a shot list is sometimes like almost like immersive theater. It's like, where do you want the camera to be? So similar to how Kingsley was talking about it being in the arena, taking it out of that arena space and being like, okay, if it wasn't a proscenium, what would it look like? And where do you want the audience? And how do you tend to that? And that extended all the way to like talking about lenses and the cameras and the look and what that all of those are choices about that we make on theater side of like, is it a black box? Is it a proscenium? Like what those spaces are, and starting to do that on the other side, talking about aspect ratio, a lot of the things that like feel like givens that are just differences between the form. Another thing that we spent a lot of time on was talking about sound, just like the audio quality of a performance on stage is very different than an audio performance when on a mic for a film set, and I don't know, tooling with that a little bit. Yeah.
Totally. Like I know you mentioned as we were going to shooting, you were like, Misty really needs to listen to it and hear that they're delivering it for a camera versus like projecting for a stage is one thing I remember you calling out. That was like something that maybe yeah, a theater director wouldn't really think about. So yeah.
Part of it.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of like how we think about loud and soft and projection, and like what it means to be on voice just means a totally different thing in theater than it does on film, and how much support. And I mean like I think we've all watched films where it's like everyone's whispering and you're like, how did everyone start whispering? But you're combating a different thing than you would from whispering on stage. I don't know if this is making sense, but I feel like that's sort of what we were talking about for a while.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, Rachel. I totally understand. And, that was another thing that Carly and I talked about in this incarnation of hoping to achieve a better sound quality overall. And we did find out, well, there are two things. I would say before doing TRUSpeak, I didn't really have I always had the appreciation, but the real understanding of the editor and the sound. The two things that it's hardest to sort of get because they're in such demand, and how you really have to sort of factor in the sound really as early as you can, because a lot of times people leave it for the end. Oh, we'll figure it out, after. And to be really proactive to try to engage sound people, which is difficult on the budget that we were, dealing with, as well as the editors who are taking up so much time that I have so much respect for. In that was a revelation when in another incarnation, I actually sat down with an editor who was fixing other projects, and I just have all the respect for the editors. Carly is an editor, so Carly, speak on that.
Yeah. I mean, in general, just thinking about film is like it is a very technical thing, and you need a strong technical team from the start to the end. And a lot of it, editing especially, I feel like we can get to it in a sec. But I did just want to ask Rachel a little bit more about bringing a team on board and how the person that the director is collaborating with different people along the way than they would be collaborating with on the stage. So, right, like with the DP and then the editor, could you just talk a little bit about maybe what like the learning curve would be with a director coming into this and who they're collaborating with and what that relationship looks like? You can get into editing if you want, or I know you were really involved more with like the DP element so far because we're just starting editing. So
Yeah, our short filmed a little bit on the later side, but I can speak a little bit about editing as well. I think that I mean like what I would guess is like, well, words. I think that a lot of what makes storytelling impactful is about pacing. And I think that in theater, it's a given that the director really is like monitoring that pacing with the actors. And like you sort of meet the tech meets that pacing in a lot of ways. Whereas in film, it's sort of all together. Like the pacing of if you want to do a zoom in shot, or if like the camera is moving, or in edit, like how to align all of that pacing so that everyone's speaking the same language of time. Because that's like, I mean, that's the thing that's really interesting about both theater and film is that they're both playing with time as a medium, which we don't talk about a ton. I mean, like theater, it's the powerful thing that we're all in the same room at the same time, and that like every time it is different, and thus it is informed by the time that it is performed in. Whereas film, it gets locked in whenever that time is, and so you like knowing how to play with that. I think about that a lot when staffing, just making sure that like everyone is I don't know I think that the reason why a film or any piece, like you respond to it is because of the feeling. And so much of that feeling is captured in pace for these mediums. And so I think that was a big part of the conversation with DPs. We talked about, I think, like 7 or 8 DPs for this project, and landed on Chris, who was spectacular and brought like so many wonderful tools to the project. But I mean, it's a much closer collaboration than I think. I think that an editor feels a little bit closer to a dramaturg in film side, and I think a DP almost is like, I don't know, like ADs are like stage managers, and a DP sort of ends up being this whole other space. And so how to develop that relationship, how to make sure that everyone's speaking the same language is really important.
That's great,
Um,
Rach. Good
so
stuff.
interesting. And
Really good
yeah,
stuff.
so interesting. And Kingsley, I know that talking about your collaborative team, you were working with students. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and your collaborative process?
Yeah. I mean, so it Richard, like you said, when it comes to that, pacing and all, one thing I drew the students' attention to, drew the actors' attention to, is when we're like going over the script, and like as far as like performance, delivery, and all, it's a matter of balancing that, respect for the playwright's voice. It is really crucial. I'm trying to get points from the playwrights. Where are you? um, balancing that respect for the playwright, is very crucial when it comes to, theater. So that was really taken into consideration when we were working on the script, from even like from the reading to production, the actors' delivery. Working with students, I personally like to work with students. Um, any production that I get the opportunity to bring on, students, I try to do that, because I mean, of course, I'm a professor and I'm always advising my students or advocating for them to work outside of the classroom. I always tell them, think outside the four walls of the classroom, think outside the four walls of the institution. You're going to go out there, so you want to be doing more out there. So when I get opportunities or projects like this, I always try to bring one or two students on board, for it to be a learning curve for them. I'll be very honest, when I invited students on this, a few of them read the script and they were like, wait, what is this? Like, this is not a film script. And of course, students, some are I had current students, and then I have students who are just graduated, and they're like, this is not a film script. This is so Kingsley, what are we doing? Are we rewriting this? And I said, we are not rewriting it. This is the script we're going to work with. It's a so it was interesting. And initially some of them were a little like nervous. They're like, I haven't done this before, how are we going to do this? It's a little tricky. And I said, yes, that is why I'm bringing you on board. It's a new space. It's not a comfort zone. It's something that you're not even familiar with. So let's dive into it, and I'll use this as an opportunity to teach you. So they embraced it. They work amazingly on set, and I mean, at the end of it all, they realized that it's not very different. But I'll also be quick to add that, one of my so I had like a camera person helping on this, the cinematographer. I was kind of doubling as a director cinematographer, but I had a camera person on set. And few times we kind of like collided, because he was a little confused with some of the shots I was calling and the decisions I was making. And it was my fault, because I didn't make it clear to him. And again, another very good example I made earlier, that 180-degree line, 180-degree, theory, I didn't make it clear to him. So, when I was calling those shots, he was like, no, Kingsley, that's wrong. And I said,
Hmm.
don't worry, that's what we're doing. This is the reason why we are doing that. So I had to explain it to him, that's the reason why we are doing that. At some point, he actually told one student that, why would I teach them one thing and then do another thing?
Well,
I think
Kingsley, I always say it's good to know the rules, so sometimes you can break the rules.
You
So
can
that's
break
a
the
great professor.
Yeah, break the rules. Of course, I mean, in order to be able to break the rules, you ought to know the rules. You have to know the rule before you break it. So that's, that's in it as well. Know the rules, know what you're doing, but then break the rules and be unique, make it unique. So yeah, it was a great experience working with students, I must say.
I mean, also just like a really great example of like experimenting and being playful with form. They're like the thing that's like really cool when you break the 180 is it feels jarring. It like surprises an audience where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to pay attention now. There's other information that's being told to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were a few ways we did this. I wouldn't, throw it out there too much, but like a shot of a shot to Dimitri overlooking Piotr in a mirror, and then reversing it, so it gets a little confusing. It's like, where are people sitting, like which direction are people looking? But then, it is all intentional, because then at some point, if you happen to be an audience and you are moving, as a moving audience, so let's say instead of like the stage moving around, we the audience are moving, then the perspective is going to be different at each point. Whichever side you are is going to be different, and you're going to see it different. So that's the theory I try to bring to the screen as well. I know people are going to yell at me when they see the final cut, but it's also intentional, especially hardcore film folks are going to be like, what did you do right there? That's bad, but it's intentional.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think we could talk a little bit more about editing because right now we're all kind of entering the editing process, right? So this is the last kind of shaping of it. And maybe we can invite Cady back on because Cady, you have been involved with editing throughout the years, maybe a little less this year. But just kind of talking about how that works to form the final version and what we're thinking about in the editing room and what that collaboration is like.
It is tough, right? It is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I just pinned myself, so I'm the only person pinned. Am I right? Am I the only person big on the screen? Anyway, it is hard. It is an interesting, I've certainly had great experiences. I've had very frustrating experiences with editors. This experience as a producer is I am waiting to see the first cut tomorrow, so I have not been involved with this process this time. I have learned as the director, to sit over the shoulder of my editor, not to micromanage, but to be clear, clarity. If I have sent extremely detailed notes and still gotten it wrong, it's like, oh, okay, they're very detailed, but if you don't know how to read them, then it's not going to help. So it's very technical. It's a lot of stuff to go through, especially for something like this. As a director, it is very beneficial to know exactly what you want, because we're not paying somebody enough to sit behind an Avid machine for 3 months and do this. It's a very in your living room kind of environment. But I love it, and I love editing myself. I wish I had more experience on the more advanced types of editing, but I'm musical. I like the rhythm of things, and I've definitely worked with editors. It's like, oh, they don't have rhythm. They don't know what. Oh, let me do it. But yeah, it's really interesting because the great ones are great and will offer a whole new perspective. Like I liked hearing Rachel talk about how everybody has their different spots, and compared from theater to film and who's playing what part. Like, what is the editor? Because it's not the director. but it is somebody who's making the whole thing come together. Yeah, it's just a fascinating process. And I love searching for that shot you don't think you have. I just love that. Like you think, I know we do. I know we can make this happen. It may not be from the same spot you've been shooting. We will find it. We'll just look through it and find what we need. And then sometimes in other projects, it's like, oh, we don't have what we need. You just film yourself like pushing a button and then we can insert it in it's like, I don't know. It's fascinating. All of it's fascinating.
Katie, that's so interesting because with your background, I also really think that film is so much about rhythm. And as dancers, and Carly's a dancer also, and I am too. I think we have sort of an innate sort of intuition about the pacing of things and the rhythm of things of film, and working that out with an editor. Because sometimes editors can be very technical and not necessarily the artistic rhythm that, and marrying those two is a really interesting dance.
Sometimes that director wants that long pause. I do not want you to take the air out. Do not take the air out. I want to see what happens to this character, to this actor. Or nope, I mean for it to be black here. And I need it to be black, and then I need to hear something happen. Like auditory is so important. And there's so many things I don't separate theater and film all that much because I've worked with such great set designers and lighting designers. You can make so much cinematically happen in theater as well now. And having worked with like Bob Fosse, who I did a very cinematic show with him, which was unheard of at the time. Just was unheard of. And somebody said, well, if it had been his first show, they would have called him a genius. But as it wasn't his first show, and it got trashed. It's just like, you don't get it yet. Right. But there's these very specific things that you want as the director. And it's interesting you just shut me up when you need me to shut up. But as the producer, it's interesting because sometimes I do need to be the voice of somebody who can't get their point across or is not being clear. And that's something that really excites me. That's one thing about communication, right? What are we doing in art? We're communicating. And when art becomes great, it communicates to everyone. You're not literally saying, this happened to me, so obviously it happened to you. You're saying, I'm a human being. I've had these vast experiences. And if I bring my true experience to you, you're going to be like, oh, that's not my story, but it is. I do know what that is. I know what that feels like. So I just find it all so fascinating, and to find a great editor, and especially finding young, great editors for this type of process. It's interesting because I have definitely worked with experienced editors who, if they're willing to learn, it's exciting. It's not just a technical, as you said, it's not just technical. It is artistic, and you have to trust the vision. And I can't wait to see Kingsley's movie. It sounds so fascinating because ours is very straightforward. It doesn't sound like the acting or the shooting is straightforward. So I'm excited to see it.
We have a really good mix of selections, so it's really across the board. There's something for everybody. And Carly, since we have two of our playwrights here, if they may be open to just saying hey, because like I said, the genesis is the word, and so I have so much respect for the playwrights. So if they might be inclined just to say hey, and if they have anything to share or thought, open to hearing them.
Yeah, if my cat will let me.
I'm happy.
Sorry, it's his dinner time. Feel free. Anybody go ahead. I was just chiming in.
Go ahead.
Okay. So for me, this is different. Just kind of where I came from with my piece. Here he comes again. I write comedies. I got a play coming up in locally in a couple of weeks called The Nuns of Camelot. It's exactly what it sounds like. And I write plays like Little Timmy Fell Down the Well Again, or Area 51, Bring Your Kid to Work Day. Seriously, those are names of some of my plays. So, but when I saw when I originally heard the story, really I'm a huge Peter Tchaikovsky fan of his music, and he lived an amazing life. But if you're not familiar with the life of Dmitri Shostakovich, you really ought to check it out. I recommend the great courses. It's an 8-lecture set, 45 minutes a piece, and they are. He just lived one of the most incredibly compelling, tragic, wonderful, scary lives I've ever heard of. And I just kind of heard that. I'm like, well, whether you write comedies or whatever you typically write, that story will never leave me. And I had to find a way to process it. And I think that's kind of where my whole motivation came from for this piece. And, unfortunately, the whole message in the play has gotten more and more relevant as every day goes by, which is nice for us in this room, but pretty bad for the world in general. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't mention anybody past the middle of the Stalin era, because that's when it takes place in the 1940s. But you don't have to. A despot's playbook is the same today as it was in Stalin's era or the era of Genghis Khan. So for me, that's been the really phenomenal experience to think that, like, this may end up being, my piece that I'm most proud of in my entire playwriting career, and it's not what I normally do. And what Kingsley was saying, I thought was wonderful. How he's saying he loved the challenge of getting into these composers, and that has been really, really rewarding to think, like, all right, you know what, we might not be, getting many laughs or anything like that, but it really feels like I'm doing something artistically, and that's a great feeling.
You really are, Clinton, because I think each of the pieces, we selected it over a year and a half ago, and when we're selecting it, we're always sort of taking a chance. Is this going to still be, as relevant as it is now? And with each of the selections, they've become more and more and more relevant. So we say socially relevant issues, but it's like exponentially, day by day, the relevance is increasing. So thank you so much, Clinton. We really appreciate it. And Brett,
yeah,
the writer of writing lessons, thank you so much.
Well, I just had the best experience in the world with it, and I want to thank everybody that has contributed and worked on it. It's just been amazing. I am somebody who tends to want to use comedy to talk about serious things, and I'm an absurdist playwright at heart. So, you have a play where a guy walks on stage in the original version carrying a clown on his back. You got to wonder, like, what's going on. And we just had the most amazing cast. I was just blown away in the table read. But also the thing that I think is so wonderful about this is that, as a playwright, I think at least I am always nervous about how it's going to get translated from the idea of the stage to this screen situation. And I just want to say Janel was amazing. We were always on the same wavelength when we were trying to figure out how to accomplish certain things. But it is a tricky thing, especially when I've been trying to tell my students this. You can't, as a playwright, you can't tell the audience where to look. They can look anywhere they want to on the stage, but that editor and that director and that cinematographer can force attention in a certain direction. And I have to admit, as a playwright, I'm very jealous of that ability um, because I can't make anybody, focus in on anything at any particular time in a play. And I'm absolutely fascinated to see what Misty and everybody else did with, the opportunity to say, you have to look at this. This is where your attention will be. And it'll be probably my first good experience with, seeing that happen. With a work of mine. So I just want to once again just say it's been an amazing situation. I couldn't have asked for a better experience as a playwright. I really couldn't. You guys rock.
Thank you. We'll have to get that in writing, Carley. Well, I will say the thing about TRU that's really amazing is the village that sort of takes up this endeavor. And so maybe we should talk about a little bit about budgets, Carley, because for our guests who may not be aware, we produce each of these little short pieces. The budget is $2,000. So that's really where, the producer and just, everyone sort of coming together, either donating their time or their skills or their connections to sort of make this all kind of come together. Carley, do you want to talk a little bit about the agreement that we're under?
Yes, so we are under the SAG micro agreement budget. So within that, it is for new media pieces that are not going to be performed live. And it allows us to pay actors whatever and I think it allows us to pay everyone whatever, but we were trying to pay everyone at least a stipend. So really this is about as flexible as it gets. And it definitely, with this budget, it did consist of like all of us asking favors. So technically like making a short film for this amount is like kind of not enough. So yeah, I want to invite any answers. I know, Cady, you came in under budget. I don't know. I think people just love you. I know Rachel and I asked favors. We worked with people who we've done favors for. So yeah, we would love to have more money one day. Donate TRU. But this is, yeah, we all managed to do it. Everyone managed to put this together. And yeah, if anyone has anything to add there, I think it's force of personality kind of.
Don't limit yourself thinking about money.
Yeah,
right.
Money can be really stifling. And I can, you can shoot almost any environment in a corner in your apartment. You can make it what you need it to be. Hang a curtain, put up a picture, there's a desk, there's a chair, you can make your environment what you need it to be because it is film.
Sure.
And you literally did that, Cady, in the original in Game Boy. You were putting up your own green screen. You were doing all the things. So
I did all the things that year. That was fun. That was that first year. Yeah, where I actually handed a water bottle to my son, who was not even in the room with me. He was sitting on a couch that didn't exist in my home because we were all in quarantine, and it worked out pretty darn well. You see him pick up that bottle, and there we are in the same place together. But yeah, I have a little green screen here at home, and that's what I used with Vianne. You know what? I keep stuff. I got that green screen during the pandemic because I shot as an actor and they sent it to me and they didn't want it back. So I'm like, well, that's staying with me. Keep stuff. I have
resourceful.
Yeah, you just keep stuff, and because I have old costumes. I know I can help you with your makeup if you need help. I can help you with your hair if you need help. You get the people. That was another reason Wendy was there. It's like, if Tanya needs to feel comfortable that she's looking good in every shot, please go up to her every shot and make sure she's comfortable. There's just, yeah, it's so budget. I don't know. You just, you ask. And if somebody says no, don't freak out, go somewhere else. It really is. I mean, I'm old now, so I probably just don't get as excited anymore as, the youngsters do. But, you just realize things will work out if you really just keep looking and don't panic. There's no panic.
Yeah, we've been really blessed by the talent that surrounds just the goodwill around TRU. So we're really, really grateful on that end. Carley, did we miss any questions that we were spinning around?
I think we got. Oh yeah, Scott is raising his hand.
I just did want to mention a resource because alas, none of our apartments were actually quite right for what we needed to do. So we searched, we found a resource. I think Carolyn found it, or maybe one of you guys did, called Peer Space, and we were able to that we were able to find a place that was ideally suited to our needs, where we could shoot the domestic scenes, the apartment scenes, in I guess the kitchen and the living room. But there are other scenes that take place in other locations that we had planned on green screening. So we shot the green screen scenes there as well. So I mean, it accommodated the right sort of kitchen and living room that we needed for these shots, some of which were very tight. And it also, we were able to do the location shooting there as well. So that was, and that was, I think it was a 6-hour rental or something like that. Maybe it was longer. Maybe it was an 8-hour rental. Maybe it was shorter. I don't know. But we were there for the day, and it was just a terrific resource if you need a location. And it really is sort of like, it's kind of a combination of like Airbnb and WeWork, where it's like, oh, you're renting out this apartment or this, whatever, this living space where for people to do, like, to have a meeting or a film shoot or just a rehearsal. It's for whatever you need it, and it's just a matter of a nominal fee and respect for the space.
Mm-hmm. Just make sure you do your due diligence, though, because Carley was the one that found Peer Space and suggested it. But just make sure you do your due diligence, just like you would for Airbnb.
Absolutely.
Because we had to do a little bit of a switch around at the last minute when that space wasn't available. And then Carley,
did.
And then Carley had a friend, so it all works out. But it's always good to have another resource.
We did our due diligence. It was sometimes the host is like, oops, and we had to scramble, but it all worked out very, very well.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
shoot everything in the same location. I mean, that's a huge benefit to you.
Yeah. Even if one of those locations is a hospital emergency room or a public park, that's what the green screen is for, and that is the magic of cinema. So there it is.
And it helps your sound. You're not shooting outside.
Yes, it does.
I mean, we shot outside, so there's also...
I have shot outside before, and it's crazy.
It's crazy, yeah.
Now, high degree of difficulty there on writing lessons with all the New York in the park. It was a whole thing, but thank goodness all cooperated. But that was a high degree of difficulty, shooting in the wild, as they call it.
Yeah, but I think Scott brings up a really great point, which is like the respect of the space, but also just like when you're working with such a small budget, having so much respect and transparency when you reach out to collaborators, I feel like is really like essential, because like people's time is worth a lot, and if you're asking for under the value that you think that they are worth, then you has to come with a lot of respect, and has to come with a lot of like, and if this is like not for you, totally understand. But I think when we were pitching to a lot of people, even just disclosing that there were 5 shorts all shooting for $2K was so useful to talking to collaborators, where it's like, no one's getting more than this. It's not like all of it's going to a camera department or all of it's going to an actor. Like, this is all as egalitarian as it can be, and we'll make it as transparent as possible so that everyone feels respected and like they're being seen for the work that they're doing.
Yes, it's truly a goodwill project, I say.
Did we want to open it up to Q&A from the room? Is that what we...
Jay, is there anything in the chat that you'd like to bring to our attention?
No, actually. What did Barry's question get answered here? What length scripts do you produce in this program? It sounds like one script is selected from a pool. Is that correct?
So the time for the submission, it's a 15-minute script. It basically has to fit within that time frame of 15 minutes. And that's really the only strong sort of parameter that we have around it, and it being socially relevant.
Thank you. Okay, very good. That's the only question in the chat. If anyone in the room has a question, please raise your virtual hand, and we will let you unmute.
Or put it in the chat, either one.
Or put it in the chat. Yeah. So, Bueller. So, okay. All right. Well, I will take this moment to thank everyone for joining. Let me spotlight myself. Here we go. Hi, everyone. So thank you very much to our guests today, Cady, Kingsley, Rachel, Scott. Thank you to Brett and Clint, our writers, for being here. And last but never, ever, ever, ever least, Carley and Janel, thank you so much for being here, for running this, and for leading this wonderful discussion. So excellent representation of TRUSpeak and of TRU in general, the two of you are. So thank you very much for everything. Yes, next week, Bob will be back. He arrives at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. And I'm sure I will hear from him Sunday morning. We'll see Bob again next week as they come back. And reminder, next week is a group of people who were in Edinburgh with them at the Fringe Fest, talking about their experiences producing their work. So come join us again for that one. As Bob often says, if you want to be on our mailing lists, please email us at trunltd@aol.com. I will put that in the chat right now. At aol.com. Just respond to that saying you want to be on the Zoom list, and you will find out every week what our community gatherings will be. As Bob says, we do this for free. This is a community outreach service that we do, and we are more than happy to do that. But we do have money. We do need to make money and pay the bills. So we are right now at the tail end of our summer donor drive. So please consider participating and contributing to the summer donor drive so we can continue to do programs like TRUSpeak and the True Voices series and all the other things that we do and provide to the community. So once again, Carley, Kingsley, Rachel, Kingsley, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Cady, Janel, Scott, Clinton, and Brett, thank you all so much for coming. And everybody, thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful Labor Day.